Okay, the second question on the quiz review is about graphing and being able to interpret graphs, right? So we've got this graph here to the right, and it shows income and cost graphs for a lawn mowing business. So we're supposed to look at this graph and use it to interpret things. So the first question, which line most likely represents the income? Well, here we've got a line that starts at 0, and then it goes up by 40 over 2, 40 over 2, 40 over 2. So that's going up about $20 every lawn, right? Here we've got another equation that starts out at 180 and then goes up 20 every 5, right? 20 over 5. So that's like going up $4 every lawn mowed, right? So if we think about it, it makes more sense for B to be the cost. That we would start out having an initial cost for the startup business, $180 where you probably bought the lawnmower. And then we would have a small amount of cost for every lawn mowed, right? Like $4 every lawn mowed, that's probably for the gas. Whereas this A makes more sense for the income because you're not going to start with any income, but then you're going to make $20 every time you mow a lawn, $20 every time you mow a lawn, $20 every time you mow a lawn, and eventually your income is going to be greater than your cost. It better be. So it makes sense for, that's the other way you can tell it, makes sense for the income to start out lower than the cost, but eventually to get higher. If it doesn't work out that way, it's not a very good business, right? You want your income to eventually exceed the cost, even if you start out in the hole. So I'm going to say A, because it makes more sense, and I'm not going to write all this, you can. So for me, my reason is it makes more sense to start out with less money, income-wise, than cost, but eventually to make more income than cost. But again, you could have used a different reason. You know, it makes sense to start out with no income and then earn $20 per lawn. That's another reason. Lots of reasons you could write here. But the main thing is A is the one, and then you need to give your reason. Okay, the second part, what is the independent variable and how do you know? Now remember, independent variable and dependent variable, these are not numbers. Do not write numbers. Independent variable is an idea. What is the independent variable? It's always what you put on the x-axis, the number of yards mowed. Number of yards mowed. Now you could say a couple, so then it's not asking about dependent, but dependent is dollars. So a couple of things you could say. How do you know? Well, because it's on the x-axis. Or how do you know? Well, because the number of yards mowed causes you to earn dollars. So it's a cause that makes it independent. Or you can say, well, because dollars depends, the dollars you earn depends on the number of yards you mowed. So dollars is dependent, number of yards is independent. So you need to choose your reason for how do you know and write it here. So the independent is number of yards mowed, and you need to say why. Okay, what is the equation for line A, for C? Now the equation for line A, going back, we already talked about starting points and slope, right? So line A starts at 0 and then goes up 40 and over 2. So those are the two things you need to know. You need starting. It's starting at 0, right? And it goes up 40 over 2. That's rise over run, right? So that's 40 over 2 equals 20. So this is the slope, right? So we can just take these 2 points, y-intercept, slope, and then we can write the equation. We know if it starts at 0 and then it adds 20 for each lawn, that's going to be the cost, right? So y equals, or you could have written y equals mx plus b, right? Slope times x plus 0. And if you wanted to leave the 0 off, you could have. So any of those would be fine, right? Your starting place plus how much you go up every lawn. Now, what's the equation for line B? Line B has starting at 180, right? It starts at 180, and it goes up 20. That's 180 to 200, right? So 20 every 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lawns mowed. So goes up 20 and over 5. That's the rise over the run. Rise over run is 20 over 5, which equals 4, right? So starting at 180 and going having a, earning, you're basically losing, it's costing you $4 every lawn mowed. So you're starting at 180, and then you're adding to the cost $4 every time you mow a lawn. And that's y, right? And again, you could have said y equals mx plus b. Y equals 4, the slope, times x, plus the y-intercept. Either way is fine, way to think about it. So either of these equations works. And E, how many yards do you have to mow before you break even? Where on the graph does it show this? So remember, the break-even point, this is where they intersect. This is when their cost is equal for the number of yards mowed. So that is 11 yards. At 11 yards, they're going to break even, right? 11 yards, break even point, right? And I know this, you need to say why. Where on the graph does it show this? It shows it at the intersection point. So at the intersection point. You need to have that information there.